I'm making 2 pies. So the recipe for the crust, I usually make the crust first and throw that into the refrigerator and let it cool while I'm working on the apples. So the recipe for a single pie with a top and a bottom is 2 cups of flour, so I've got 4 cups here since I'm making 2 pies. It's 1 teaspoon of salt, so I've got 2 teaspoons of salt here. We'll throw that in there. We want to mix the salt in with the flour. Mix that in pretty good, and then we'll add, it's 1 cup of shortening per top and bottom crust. So obviously that will be 2 cups of shortening, which we will cut into the flour here. So here's 2 cups. I like using these as opposed to the scooping it out and measuring it. It's much easier this way. You can use I think they call them pastry knives. I just tend to use a fork and work at cutting the shortening into the flour. Get it mixed real good. And obviously when I play this back for you all, this will be sped up and probably with a different voiceover. Once we get it all cut in, you want to use cold water, and the recipe calls for, again, this is for 1 pie top and bottom crust, calls for anywhere from 1/3 of a cup to 1/2 cup of cold water, and it'll vary depending on what your humidity is, the temperature. So I always start with 1/2 cup of water for a single pie, top and bottom, and usually pour about half of it in, and maybe end up using the whole 1/2 cup in time. Sometimes I don't use a full 1/2 cup. But for this batch, obviously we're going to use almost a cup of water until we get the right consistency. So you see here we've got, pretty good cut in the shortening into the flour. So let me get some cold water. Okay, so we have 1 cup of water, and we're gonna pour that through. And again, I didn't use the full cup just in case we have enough there. And we start mixing it in all together. And we don't want it too wet or too dry. This is kind of a feel thing. And it's a little bit on the dry side, so we're going to add some more water here in a second. Go ahead and use all of that cup of water. Now, one of these days, I'm going to get me one of those really nice Cuisinart mixers that'll do pie dough and bread dough as well. But for now, we do it the old-fashioned way. So that's pretty good right there. That's a good consistency. Now what we need to do is make 2 tops and 2 bottoms. So it's going to be 4 balls that I'll roll these into. And if it's on the sticky side, just take a little bit of flour, throw it in there, working on your hands, run the dough through the flour, and then we're going to just kind of cut it into 4 equal sized balls, about that size. After I do this, what I'll do, I found it easier over the years as I've done this to actually take the pie dough and put it in the refrigerator or the freezer for while I work on the apples. The colder the dough is, the easier it is to roll out. And I've got a really nice little device that I ordered online that's, I'll show it to you a little bit later, but it really makes rolling out your pie dough a lot easier. You don't want to play with the dough too much, but there you go. There's 4 balls.